Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Tuesday, November 25th, 2025. I'm Errol Lewis. After agreeing with most New Yorkers that child care is too expensive, Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani have promised to beef up government programs so that families who want child care can get it. But many plans are estimated to cost billions of dollars statewide, and it will be a challenge for the governor to come up with a solution without raising taxes during an election year, while also helping Mamdani keep a campaign promise. Our State House reporter Bernadette Hogan joins me now for a closer look in tonight's top story. Good evening, Bernadette.
Good evening, Errol. So these are promises that the governor is trying to deliver on as she's running for re-election in 2026, but also battling some problems with federal funding from the federal government, and as to whether or not she can fulfill her end of the bargain with Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani's campaign promises.
We are on a path to universal child care.
A multi-billion-dollar promise from Governor Kathy Hochul.
We've already invested $7 billion in child care, whether it was increasing the subsidies to go to families.
But providing a program to every New Yorker who wants free child care is a different story.
She'll be the first one to tell you that it can't happen overnight.
Families shell out tens of thousands of dollars per kid annually. Hochul already expanded a tax credit, spends billions on vouchers covering 170,000 kids statewide up until age 13, and cuts bonus checks for workers. Now, with an ally and added pressure from the popular Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, she's drafting a plan.
Where can they come together to shift resources from lower impact uses to childcare, and how can they work together to do that?
Already, New York City offers free seats for 4-year-olds and most 3-year-olds. Mamdani wants the city to pay for babies' care starting at 6 weeks old, up until they're 5 years old. The price tag, around $6 billion annually.
Maybe partnering with businesses, maybe tax credits. You have to decide how much money you have to put into it and what's the most cost-effective way to serve people in need.
Counties outside the 5 boroughs have programs. Many have wait lists. And many parents pay out of pocket or rely on family for help. Now, Hochul wants the state to set up universal care for 2-year-olds and phase it in. First, targeting lower-income kids. Sources say her goal is free statewide care up until age 5.
Most families are like one event away from financial ruin because they have not been able to put money into their savings account because of the cost of childcare, right? 40% of families are in debt because of the cost of childcare. It costs $40,000 for childcare for one child, which is more than your rent, your mortgage, or your college tuition.
Pitching national lawmakers, and now Hochul, advocates say federal and state tax credits must be maximized by companies.
Whether they're providing childcare subsidies for their employees, whether they're providing backup care, whether they're building childcare centers, right? They're engaged in this conversation. We brought business leaders to Congress to speak to both Democrats and Republicans about why public investment, federal investment in childcare was critical.
Estimated to eventually cost $15 billion across all 62 counties, Robert Mujica says it's doable without new taxes.
There are ways to phase these programs in. You could phase them in based on geography, based on eligibility, based on age. And the state has done that before and has been able to expand programs without necessarily raising taxes.
He served as New York's budget director under Hochul and Andrew Cuomo.
If we have new initiatives that we want to fund, then how do we find those resources within the growth that's normally going to happen in the budget? And that has been done before. It has been done with pre-K, right? The city went ahead with 3K.
So as we go forward towards the beginning of the legislative session, Errol, on January 1st, the governor is going to have to present her state budget, so her spending priorities, but then also figure out what exactly the city wants. The city needs to right-size its own finances. You know, the Mamdani administration is inheriting a lot from the Adams administration, some out-year budget gaps. So Hochul is tempering expectations and promising these things that she supports, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll even see a ramped-up universal child care program in year 1, 2, or even 3 or 4 of a Mamdani administration.
It is interesting, though, that the former budget director, Robert Mujica, says that it can be done, that $15 billion in a state budget of $212 billion is not all that much.
Right, and I wish I could have used more from the interview with him, because when he worked under Andrew Cuomo as his budget director, he was able to negotiate with the de Blasio administration to help with that first iteration of universal child care. But I think the key, reading between the lines there, is there's always money for something. It just depends on where it comes from. So New York has an over $250 billion state budget. A third of it comes from the federal government, right? We have good revenues coming in, meaning sales tax, Wall Street looks fine. The problem is, how much of a hole do federal complications with the hospital system, right? How much is the hospital system going to come to the governor's office and say, listen, we can't keep up with this? Or, you know, especially those safety net hospitals, right, that rely on federal dollars and Medicaid money. So again, there's always money to go around. It just depends on how much there is to spend.
Very interesting. Thank you, Bernadette. Some city council members are hoping to raise their salaries with a new bill that was introduced today, but any pay hike will have to wait. The legislation ran into some legal problems. Our Kelly Mena is here to explain what happened and why. Good evening, Kelly.
Good evening, Aaron. Those hopes now dash amid those legal troubles. City council members and city electeds will have to wait one more year to see a pay bump.
We need to be able to afford to live in the city.
Plans for raising the salaries of the city's elected officials stalled this week amid legal concerns. The delay is due to a local law that prohibits salary increases between an election and the end of the year.
Essentially, that provision is designed to prevent what frankly smacks of self-dealing, where city council members, elected officials have just gone before the voters and immediately after vote to raise their own pay at the time in which they won't actually be before the voters again for another 4 years.
Grace Rao, executive director of Citizens Union, a government watchdog group, said the appropriate way to handle raises is through an independent commission.
Mayor de Blasio did this when he was mayor to study not just the pay level of elected officials in New York City, but look at what is happening nationally. Hold a public process, produce real research and a report and a recommendation. And that's what happened the last time city council members saw their pay go up.
It was 2016 when the city's elected officials saw their last pay increase. The bill that was introduced on Tuesday aims to give a 16% wage hike to council members, the mayor, the city comptroller, the public advocate, the borough presidents, and the 5 district attorneys. The prime sponsor of the bill, Queens Councilwoman Natasha Williams, told New York One in a statement, "Today's introduction begins the review process the charter anticipates. The last full review was in 2016, and this step allows time for a formal evaluation and recommendations before a vote next year. Introducing it now ensures the process can move forward on the timeline the charter lays out." Williams said she is not disappointed the vote cannot take place this year. The bill has 32 co-sponsors, including all the contenders for council speaker except Julie Menon. Council members say the legal concerns are simply a delay, but not a stopping point in their fight for higher pay.
We're not trying to become millionaires. We're just trying to really get what we think we should, especially when we're working 24 hours a day.
And this bill would have to go before a committee, get voted out of committee, then voted by the full city council. And then if it is approved, it will go into effect in the year that it is approved, Errol.
Are they showing any interest in doing a commission, something a little bit more comprehensive than just kind of awarding themselves more money?
Yes, they do. And in this bill, there is a provision that would require the mayor to convene that commission. They're hoping that with the bill, there'll be some movement on this. I was talking to city council members earlier today, and they said that this has been an issue for many of them for many years.
Okay, I understand there's a development on a different story involving the Elizabeth Street Garden.
Yes, that's right. So Elizabeth Street Garden, controversial housing development for the last couple of months. Mayor Eric Adams had tried to build some senior affordable housing at that location, Elizabeth Street Garden, ran into some legal trouble. Then he decided to change and choose some other plots. Now, last week, the developers of the original Elizabeth Street Garden housing development sued the city and tried to stop them from turning it into a public or a city park. Now we're hearing that there might have reached an agreement for those developers at the original Haven Green development site for a different location close to where Elizabeth Street Garden is. And obviously a great development for the city. Facing that lawsuit isn't something that you welcome, isn't something that you want, and obviously something for a win for the mayor as he's outgoing. You know, affordable housing has been something very big for him as in these last couple of weeks.
Okay, thanks very much, Kelly. It is time for a break. Coming up, Zohran Mamdani is set to become mayor at the age of 34, but he will not go down in the history books as the youngest mayor ever. We'll tell you about the city's youngest mayor. His name is Hugh J. Grant. Also tonight, we will examine some of the key education challenges that Mayor-elect Mamdani will face. I'll be joined by a former deputy schools chancellor. And then later, I'll be joined by two housing experts to talk about planned cuts by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day with in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Spectrum TV, isn't that only live TV?
No, it's only all my favorite streaming apps with live TV.
Okay.
It's only all included at no extra cost. And that's the magic of math. Will this be on the test? Sure. Why not?
It's only one simple payment for all our TV. We gotta simplify and win. Winning is equally important.
If not, more so.
Yeah!
Only Spectrum TV, fixed TV.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of, they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You done with the sports section?
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. A day after a judge threw out a federal fraud case against Letitia James, the state attorney general continued her legal push against the Trump administration in an entirely separate matter. She has joined a multi-state lawsuit that is fighting cuts to a housing program for the homeless. Our Ayanna Harry joins me now with more on that. Good evening, Ayanna.
Good evening, Errol. It's considered a bridge between living on the streets and a better life. The Federal Continuum of Care program funds supportive housing initiatives all across the country and right here in New York City. Now the Trump administration is looking to significantly scale the program back. This has now become the latest high-profile fight between the president's administration and our state attorney general, Letitia James.
Myself, I've gotten over 400 people off the streets into permanent housing, most of them in permanent housing now. I don't want to get calls from them saying that they're going back to a shelter.
Fighting federal funding cuts. Tuesday, State Attorney General Letitia James announced New York is one of 19 states now working to stop the Trump administration from slashing $3 billion in permanent housing assistance for the homeless.
This is probably one of the scariest times for homeless and vulnerable people than ever before.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development recently rolled out new conditions for its Continuum of Care program, which would significantly reduce funding for supportive housing programs run by local nonprofits across the country. According to the State Attorney General's office, the changes would leave 5,000 households in New York City in jeopardy. Former homeless New Yorker Shams DeBaron.
It costs more to place people in shelters. It's costing us more in emergency room visits and all those other things than it does to keep people permanently housed.
On Fox Business last week, HUD Secretary Scott Turner insisted the Continuum of Care program was broken.
During the Biden administration, it was just warehousing. It was a homeless industrial complex, basically, a slush fund for nonprofits around the country.
The newly filed lawsuit against the Trump administration seeks a court order blocking changes to Continuum of Care, arguing HUD's policy changes were made without the necessary congressional approval.
There is no recourse but to try and find legal means to work around this.
James is challenging Trump in court again, one day after the federal mortgage fraud case against her was dropped. The judge found the U.S. attorney who secured the indictment against James was appointed illegally after Trump pressured the Department of Justice to bring a federal case against Tish James. The White House vowed Monday the case against James isn't over yet.
The Department of Justice will be appealing very soon.
Yeah, the case against State Attorney General Letitia James was tossed without prejudice, which means she can be indicted over the same allegations. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has vowed to use all available action to continue pursuing a case against James. Errol.
It sounds like New York and the 19 other states were sort of blindsided by this change in the HUD program.
And not only were they blindsided, but also local nonprofits. And so one of the organizations that I spoke with said, you know, the organizations that run these supportive housing initiatives, they have leases in buildings. They are, you know, renting out apartments. They have utility bills to pay. So they have real financial commitments that they are obligated to meet, and they are planning to use this federal funding not just to provide that housing, but also to meet these obligations. And so if this funding does go away, it could not only leave New Yorkers scrambling to find a place to go, some might end up back in homeless shelters, but also leaves these nonprofits trying to figure out what to do with the debt.
Okay, we're going to have more to say about this with two housing experts later in tonight's program. Thanks very much, Ayanna. When 34-year-old Zohran Mamdani is sworn into office on January 1st, he will become the second youngest mayor in our city's history. The youngest was Hugh J. Grant, who became mayor back in 1889 at the age of 30. Although Grant's age may not have been clear at the time. Our Bobby Kuza joins me now to explain. Good evening, Bobby.
Good evening, Errol. And I think the most interesting thing when you go back and look at Hugh J. Grant is not that he was so young, it's that nobody was really clear on how old he was. And even now, when you go back and look at historical accounts, even the New York City website, sometimes his birth year is 1852 or 1853. But there have been some accounts, including this New York Times column back in 2011, that went back and looked at his death certificate, some census records, and found he was almost certainly born in 1858, which made him by far the city's youngest mayor, several years younger than Zohran Mamdani.
The whole point was he was a fresh face with a clean record.
That fresh face was Hugh J. Grant, who became mayor of New York City at the age of 30. He was a Tammany Hall politician, the New York City political machine often synonymous with corruption and patronage. But according to historian David Hammack, Grant had a clean record.
It was an advantage for him to have been young because politics was very rough and tumble. And the longer you're in it, the more, and certainly in those days, and I don't think that's changed, the more ammunition you give to potential enemies.
It was another mayor, John Perroy Mitchell, who was known as the Boy Mayor, having taken office in 1914 at 34 years and 5 months. Zohran Mamdani, who turned 34 last month, will be slightly younger than Mitchell come Inauguration Day. But Hugh J. Grant was younger than both men, though his precise age wasn't clear even during his life. His 1910 obituary in the New York Times said he was born in 1853, which would have made him 35 when he was mayor. Lily Tuttle is a curator at the Museum of the City of New York.
My interpretation is that his date and his relative youth was maybe soft-pedaled during his election because he was a Tammany guy, and Tammany did not want to emphasize his youth.
Tuttle notes that Grant governed a very different city before the 5 boroughs were consolidated in 1898. Since then, the city's 23 mayors have averaged 50.7 years of age at the time of their election, according to the museum. Grant, the well-connected son of a tavern owner, was an alderman and sheriff before winning 2 two-year terms as mayor. One of his notable achievements was pushing to have the city's overhead utility wires buried underground. But for the most part, Grant did not leave a large historical imprint. Peter Christian Eigner is director of the Gotham Center for New York City History at the CUNY Graduate Center.
It would be kind of a little dismissive to just call these people kind of managers, but that was often kind of the term that was used. And I think Grant was just kind of filling a seat. That's kind of the impression you get sometimes reading this period of history.
And just one other little bit of Hugh Grant trivia. His townhouse, the family townhouse on the Upper East Side, was actually bequeathed to the Archdiocese of New York, and now it's the residence for the Vatican's representative to the UN. And when the Pope comes to visit New York City, which happens every so often, that's where he stays, at the former Grant residence.
Oh, very interesting. This is at a time, by the way, when it's not like we had big contested primaries, right? When we talk about Tammany, it's like it was who the nominee would be was kind of decided in a back room.
That's right. But then there was still an election where there was the Tammany candidate and the anti-Tammany candidate, and sometimes a Republican, so that what did still get, a little contentious in the election itself. But yes, there was not a lot of democracy within Tammany in terms of selecting their own candidate.
All right. Thanks very much, Bobby. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, some Democrats who recorded a message for federal troops say that they are now being investigated by the FBI. We'll explain why in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters on your smart TV and connected devices, streaming live 24/7, plus on-demand weather forecast to help you stay prepared. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News, free with your Spectrum subscription, exclusively for Spectrum customers, now available on your favorite devices.
It's only a game. It's only a little rivalry. It's only a ritual. When I come home and a few generations. You're always there. And only Spectrum TV includes all your favorite streaming apps with live TV at no extra cost. It's only a game. It's only everything.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over. Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together. It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York 1 to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood. Because our city never stops moving.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first, stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. The Trump administration is ramping up the pressure on 6 Democrats in Congress for a video that reminds service members of their duty to, quote, disobey illegal orders. The FBI reportedly wants to question these members of Congress, and the Pentagon has begun its own investigation of one of them. That's Senator Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain. And that, in turn, could lead to him being recalled into active duty in order to face a possible court-martial. Spectrum News national reporter Evan Koslov joins me now from our Washington, D.C. bureau with the latest in this case. Good evening, Evan.
Well, hey there, Errol. Yeah, this video has created quite the firestorm in the nation's capital as the president and the defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, have fumed over the video, pledging to hold the 6 Democrats accountable, in particular, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain, as the Pentagon considers, like you said, calling him back into active duty to face a possible court-martial.
We want to speak directly to members of the military.
This is the video that sparked all the controversy. 6 Democratic lawmakers, all retired military or former intelligence officers, giving this message to current service members.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
President Donald Trump responding to the video by calling the lawmakers traitors, writing in one post that they engaged in seditious behavior, punishable by death. Since then, we've seen a flurry of actions by the Trump administration against these lawmakers.
You can't have a functioning military if there's disorder and chaos within the ranks, and that's what these Democrat members were encouraging.
On Tuesday, Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan confirmed that the FBI has now reached out to schedule interviews with the 6 lawmakers.
This is a scare tactic by him. He is attempting to use the FBI to scare us out of continuing to talk and have conferences like this.
And this comes one day after the Pentagon announced an investigation into Arizona Senator Mark Kelly to determine whether the retired Navy captain and astronaut could be recalled into active duty to face a court-martial or other punishment. Pentagon head Pete Hegseth railed against the video on Tuesday, writing the seditious 6 knew exactly what they were doing, sowing doubt through a politically motivated influence operation. Hegseth also mocked Kelly, who had posted a photo of his military medals. Hegseth writing, "Your medals are out of order," and rows reversed. When/if you are recalled to active duty, I'll start with a uniform inspection. Senator Kelly firing back on the investigation, writing, "I've given too much to this country to be silenced by bullies who care more about their own power than protecting our Constitution."
All right, now Kelly is the only one of the 6 Democrats that's being investigated by the Pentagon. That's because he's the only one who retired as a member of the military, which leaves him subject to military law. And Errol, just into the newsroom, we got our hands on a memo right here from the Secretary Hegseth saying that he wants to get briefed on Kelly's review by December 10th, so about 15 days.
In Focus with Cheryl Wills, a weekly show discussing decisions and potential solutions for issues making an impact in your community and your city. If it's important to New Yorkers, then it's being talked about here. In Focus with Cheryl Wills, Sunday mornings at 10:30 on New York One.
It's only a slice. It's only made possible by Spectrum, connecting businesses of all sizes, like small businesses, instantly serving up orders and inventory on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network, and factories, seamlessly connecting to farmers in the field with tailored solutions that always deliver. It's only a slice. It's only everything. Get your business free fiber-powered internet forever. Call to find out how.
I'm Chris Jakomick. I served in the United States Air Force, and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, "My job is people, everyone is my business." But unfortunately, in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakomick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is inheriting the largest public school system in the nation, and his inauguration comes as the city's public schools continue to comply with a state law that mandates smaller class sizes between 20 and 25 students. As of next year, public schools led by Mamdani will have to ensure that 80% of classrooms fall within those limits. My next guest published an op-ed in the New York Daily News that says, in part, education may not have defined his campaign, but how Mamdani runs schools will define his administration. Joining me now to talk more about all of this is Shale Polikow-Saransky. He's the president of the Bank Street College of Education and a former deputy chancellor of our school system. Great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Before we do anything else, explain the connection between Bank Street, the college that you run, and the Bank Street School, which a very young elementary school Zohran Mamdani attended.
Yeah, Bank Street runs a school for children starting at 1-year-old up to 8th grade, and Zohran was a student there when he was in elementary school. I actually have a funny story. His first big upset in an election was back in 2004 when, as a 7th grader, the school was doing a mock election for the presidential election, and usually just 8th graders got to run. He convinced the teachers to let a 7th grader run and won powered by the youth vote, upsetting the establishment back then.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's a great story. A great origin story. I want to ask you about this op-ed. Yeah, what you're mentioning is that to meet this class size mandate, which has in some cases been treated as a budgetary problem, as a logistics problem, you're saying it's an opportunity, and that using an internship/apprentice model, you can get someone in who's not just a teacher's assistant, but somebody who's really learning how to do it, a junior and a senior teacher together. It both helps with the teaching and also helps meet the class size mandate.
Exactly. I mean, we can treat this as a crisis, and that's what a lot of times when there's teacher shortages, cities and states around the country do. What you end up doing then is bringing in lots of underprepared teachers, and that doesn't help anyone. So if we can think creatively about how do we take these two challenges, we need to hire thousands and thousands more teachers, and we also need to train those teachers. Create a year-long residency model where those teachers are trained, give them the state certification that they need to be a teacher of record while they're learning, which is the same thing we do today with our teaching fellows in New York City, and put those two teachers together in a classroom. So the younger teacher is learning, but they're also able to do small group work. I mean, if you look at the city's reading initiative, if you think about what we need in early elementary school in math, you need small groups. You need kids to have individual attention. You need a chance for the teacher to sort of do the whole class and someone else to be sitting and coaching kids on the side. And so it's a win-win, and I think it's a great way to train teachers. If you look at the top performing charter networks in the city, if you look at the private schools in the city, if you look at states like Texas and California, everyone is taking this type of approach. And it's time New York City expand that.
How was that not baked into the law in the first place? I mean, the rationale was to get smaller class sizes because there's a bunch of research that shows that it's better for the kids, but this seems to me kind of a logical adjunct to it.
I agree. I think that, you know, it costs money though. I mean, this is not as simple as just having a student teacher. You have to pay these folks, and so you need to make an investment. Governor Hochul 2 years ago made a $30 million investment statewide in these kinds of teacher residencies. California is doing $750 million. The scale is just really different. So we have to think about, do we really want to keep the teachers that we're training? There's a turnover right now in the city of 1/3 of our teachers leave after the first 3 or 4 years. We're paying for those people to get trained often, and then they go. So if we actually create a pathway into teaching that gives you a lot of support as you're learning and a lot of coaching, these residency type models keep 90% of the teachers 5 years later.
Okay, well worth looking at. I hope the transition team and everybody else will take a look at it. Let me ask you about early education, since that is part of a key promise, and probably, as far as cost, the most expensive one that the incoming mayor is talking about. Should this all be part of the formal school system? Because I know right now our pre-K and 3K, it's kind of hybrid, and actually a lot of it is contracted out to nonprofit organizations.
Look, so the amazing thing that Mayor-elect Mamdani is proposing is to start working with babies and toddlers. So from birth to 3 years old is the time when young children's brains are developing the fastest. And it's the time when you can have the biggest impact on their future life chances through education. We see in the data, it's scary, at 18 months old, already the kind of racial and socioeconomic achievement gaps that you see in 8th grade and in high school are present at that age.
I mean, they're barely crawling at that point.
Right, but our brains at that point are learning language, they're learning social emotional skills. So this is not just a pocketbook issue, this is a chance to actually impact educational equity in our city for the future. And so in order to do that, you really need to provide supports for the educators that are going to work with those children. Right now, the turnover rate for early care educators is 5 times what you see in the school system. And the reason why is that they're not paid well enough. They make less than you make as a dog walker in the New York City or at Starbucks. And so people don't stay in those jobs. So one of the proposals, and the reason it's expensive, is to bring the salaries up closer to what you have in the public school system. That is going to mean partnering with existing providers who are in nonprofits, who are working out of their homes. There are many small businesses. If you go through any neighborhood in New York City, you'll see little signs of home daycares. Those are really talented providers often, but they don't get much support. And they need both the sort of economic support to get a fair wage so that they can stay in this work, but they also need an opportunity to learn about brain development, early language development, and the things that are going to accelerate learning for young people so that when they eventually enter our school system, everyone is entering on the same footing.
One way or another, it sounds like you're talking about professionalizing what I guess used to be called family daycare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would we be breaking new ground with this? Are there other states or jurisdictions that have had success with that?
This is the largest jurisdiction ever to take on a Birth to 5 initiative. I mean, there are great models out there. Washington, D.C. has been doing really good work over the past 10 years. They actually invested in pay parity and have had really good results. But this is one of the most ambitious proposals. And, you know, interestingly, this is something that we should see in every city and state. It's a bipartisan issue. You see Republican governors and Democratic governors investing in early childhood because most parents are working. They need a place that's safe and high quality for their kids to be while they're at work.
Does it need to be universal? Should it be means tested? How should it be figured out? Because it's going to be, it sounds like, tremendously expensive.
Look, we had this debate around pre-K in the city, should it be universal? And what we saw when we made it universal is it created a different level of investment in our city and our schools for everyone. So, you know, there are lots of ways to cut this, but the power of making this a public good, making it available to everyone, is that everyone shares in the responsibility to maintain it.
And this is, I mean, this goes, I mean, this is a little bit outside the K through 12 experience that you're an expert at, right? I mean, do we have good, solid materials and training paths and methods to show people how to become educators on birth through 5?
We do. Actually, Bank Street has been training infant and toddler teachers for decades. It's one of our specialties, and it is something that CUNY does as well. And it is, you're right to say that it's not as common as training K-12 teachers because, again, there's no requirement that people get trained. And so there isn't the same kind of support. But if we invest in that support, we have great models for it.
Okay, this sounds very, very interesting. I hope your former alum will be listening to some of these ideas. Thanks a whole lot for coming in.
All right, thanks.
All right, it's time for a break now. When we come back, a group of state attorneys general is urging Congress to not block states from passing artificial intelligence laws. We'll explain why in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Bernadette, downtown, local 6, train to Brooklyn Bridge City Hall will arrive in 2 minutes.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer.
I'm so honored to be a meteorologist here at New York One because as a Brooklyn kid, this is the station that I grew up watching. Morning, noon, or night.
Our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our weather on the ones. Watch the New York One weather experts on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything. Movies, series, sports, reality, news.
Here's a look at today's top stories.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
And even more of your favorites with live TV. Stream across your devices and enjoy anywhere.
See you later.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Two milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. State Attorney General Letitia James today led a bipartisan coalition of 36 attorneys general in urging Congress to reject language in the annual National Defense Authorization Act that would prevent individual states from passing or enforcing laws that govern artificial intelligence. Spectrum News Albany reporter Jack Arpey has more in this report.
Attorney General Letitia James and a bipartisan group of attorneys general imploring congressional leaders in a letter to give states leeway to regulate artificial intelligence. It comes as those leaders consider adding language to the annual National Defense Authorization Act, which would preempt state laws governing AI. And President Trump considers a panel to challenge those laws. James and the coalition insist that blocking states from regulating AI constitutes a safety and security threat, saying in a statement in part, quote, "Every state should be able to enact and enforce its own AI regulations to protect its residents. Certain AI chatbots have been shown to harm our children's mental health, and AI-generated deepfakes are making it easier for people to fall victim to scams. State governments are the best equipped to address the dangers associated with AI," end quote. States have varying degrees of AI regulations, and New York's are ramping up. Regulations went into effect this month requiring companion operators to have safety features that interrupt users who are engaging for long periods. There are also safety protocols if a user expresses suicidal ideation or self-harm, including referring them to a crisis center, with more bills working through the legislature. It comes as New York works to balance safety and security concerns with economic development. Justin Wilcox, executive director of Upstate United, is encouraging state leaders to take a smart approach to those regulations. He says that must include investments in the power grid and embracing a wide portfolio of energy sources, which current state climate law does not allow.
Reliability margins looking into the future are diminishing because we're losing sources of energy and generation quicker than we're replacing them. And that's in part because of the CLCPA.
Meanwhile, Michael Mandel, vice president and chief economist for the Progressive Policy Institute, has crafted a toolbox for states who are implementing AI policy and says in addition to grid enhancement, there must be a leveraging of educational partnerships like Empire AI. And he also insists those initiatives must be paired with a robust tax incentive program. Jack Arpey, New York One.
It is time for a break. Coming up, two housing experts will join me to talk about a new lawsuit against the Department of Housing and Urban Development over cuts that could put thousands at risk of homelessness. Stay with us. Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 on Spectrum News New York 1. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill. And with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day with in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. As we told you earlier in the program, State Attorney General Letitia James is leading a lawsuit against the Trump administration over the more than $3 billion in budget cuts at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that are going to affect New York. The cuts signal a move away from permanent housing solutions in favor of temporary housing. The Trump administration is seeking to implement changes that would place new conditions on and actually lower the amount of overall HUD permanent housing funding that homeless individuals use to find long-term housing. The lawsuit alleges that the cuts could put 170,000 people at risk of experiencing homelessness. Here to break down what that lawsuit means, where the funding changes are going to hurt New York perhaps, we've got two nonprofit housing experts. Pascal Leone is the executive director of the Supportive Housing Network of New York. Gary Jenkins is the chief administrative officer at Urban Pathways, an organization that offers access to stable housing and essential services to people experiencing street homelessness. He formerly served as commissioner of the New York City Department of Social Services. Welcome to the program to both of you. And I want to start with you, Ms. Leone. What has been the traditional link between the Department of Housing and Urban Development and supportive housing nationwide, and how are they trying to change it?
Yeah, and so first of all, thank you for having us. The HUD earlier this month had released a notice of funding for their continuum of care. The continuum of care, or COC, is the nation's largest funding source for federal housing, for affordable housing for people with disabilities. So for New York, we get about $326 million annually in COC funding that goes to permanent housing. Primarily 90% of that goes to permanent housing like supportive housing. With this drastic and abrupt change, we're seeing that New York is standing to lose 2/3 of that funding, putting nearly 14,000 households across the state, a majority, more than half in New York City, at risk of losing their housing.
What was the rationale for the change from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development?
It's unclear because, you know, we really want to, policy really should follow the evidence. And the evidence has shown that, you know, permanent supportive housing is the most effective form of ending homelessness, chronic homelessness for people on the streets and in shelter. And so we've tried these failed policies of mandating services in temporary housing, which again are more costly than permanent supportive housing. But it looks like, you know, they're looking to go and rewind the clock and do these old and unproven strategies.
And what would that mean for organizations like yours that are dealing directly with people on the street?
First of all, Errol, thank you for having us this evening. What it means is that individuals who were formerly homeless could potentially become homeless again. So the administration is really pouring gasoline on the inferno that is chronic homelessness in New York City and across the country. It's really going to drastically impact individuals who are now on the road to being able to just live their full lives, to potentially becoming homeless again.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that number is correct, 170,000 people, where would they go?
I mean, unfortunately, they would have to go back into the shelter or on the streets. None of us want to see that.
Right. Is some of what's going on here, funding is being pushed towards faith-based organizations?
They are, prioritizing organizations that haven't done harm reduction, that believe in a treatment-first approach, whereas, again, not only the evidence, but what New York has been following in many other states is really getting folks into housing, using a housing-first approach, and then wrapping around the supports they need to stay stable. And the evidence proves it. We have 90 to 95% retention rates. Folks live with stability, with dignity, and improve their health in supportive housing.
Right. I mean, I'm trying to think of what the alternative would be. When you say they say temporary housing, but stable housing is hard for everybody to find up and down the income scale.
Absolutely.
Right?
And it's just 24 months, right? It's very short term. It's not long-term housing. And again, it comes at a cost, right? And while they're stripping this funding away from New York is going to absolutely fit the bill, right? When we know about supportive housing, or we know about emergency shelters and people living on the street, in New York City, it costs about $240 a night to house a mother and her 2 kids in a shelter. Whereas in permanent supportive housing, where that family is paying rent and getting services, it costs just $70 a day. So at a fraction of the cost, and you're actually getting someone off the streets into a permanent housing.
That's $70 a day, including the wraparound services?
Correct.
Wow. So what are the main causes of homelessness in New York City that you think the incoming administration should attack? I mean, the fight's going to go on in Washington, and the resources will come or they won't come. But what's the work that needs to get done day to day?
It's housing, right? It's affordable housing. It's building homes so folks be able to move in, get stable, get on the road to recovery. So we need housing. And it's also proven, Errol, that a housing first model really works. A treatment first model does not work. And it's proven. So we really need to build the homes for individuals to go in. We can provide the supportive services so they can be on a road to stability.
Well, yeah, talk about that on a day-to-day level, because we've reported extensively on what has been a recurring tragedy in New York, which is that a person gets some assistance, they're brought into a hospital, they're stabilized for a few days, and then they're right back out on the street. The idea of housing first is to have them in a location where you can then bring services to them and not have them end up back on the street almost immediately.
Absolutely. Providing the supportive services that they need and deserve, making sure that they have the services available to them, educating them, letting them know that there are institutions within their neighborhoods. They can go to a healthcare provider within their neighborhood. It reduces the amount of emergency visits to our hospitals. It reduces that. It also gives them the ability to really understand how do they care for themselves.
Have we sort of lost something that we had in the way of knowledge and experience and institutional support in New York? Because, I mean, I do remember the New York plan, where the state and the city both put in considerable amounts of funding in order to make sure that the supportive housing network was stable, was robust, was funded from year to year. Do we need to sort of revive that conversation?
Well, we still have those commitments, right? And we have new ones. And so New York, we're very fortunate that we have both state and city commitments into supportive housing. So New York City, we have the New York City 1515 initiative, which is about in its 10th year. And at statewide, we have the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative. What we see from this federal funding, a lot of that is also braided into some of these programs as well to provide additional support. One example is the fact that this COC funding actually provides operational support for over 110 buildings across the state, 75% of which are in New York City. And so if we lose that funding, right, building providers may have to walk away from these buildings. They will default on their mortgages. It'll be catastrophic. And then, as Gary had mentioned, what are you going to do with the people? Just because you're taking people's housing away, the folks are still here. The folks are not going to disappear. And these are folks who have have leases, who are working, who are paying rent, just pulling the rug out from under their feet is just at this time, the last thing they need to worry about during this, the holidays is thinking about, will I have my housing come February?
We have a couple of dozen states that are in this lawsuit. Is New York especially vulnerable? Are we overly dependent on this compared with other states?
Relatively, no. We do get quite a bit, but most of our funding does come from state and city, but $326 million is quite considerable, right? And this is something that the state and the city can't backfill. Luckily, we have the leadership that is really, thinking about how do we mitigate the harm, because the harm will come unless there isn't any drastic change, and that's why we're asking for Congress to act. They need to intervene, and they need to fund the existing fiscal year 2024 COC projects for another 12 months, so we don't have this gap. Have HUD come back and revisit this NOFO and figure out what the policy changes and really think about the cascading impacts on communities, because it will devastate them.
Have you been able to talk with the HUD secretary about this?
No, we were on a webinar where they were explaining just kind of the new changes, but not personally, no.
Okay, we're going to wish you both the best of luck, and we'll continue this conversation as the new administration prepares to take office on January 1st. Thanks a whole lot for coming in. That is going to do it for tonight's show. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
You've done with the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything.
Hey, brother. Be careful.
Movies.
I've got this condition where I don't feel pain.
You're a superhero.
No.
Series.
There was another murder in the building.
Sports. Reality.
Here's to a summer you'll never forget.
News.
Here's a look at today's top story.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
Even more of your favorites with live TV.
Welcome into First Take.
Stream across your devices and watch anywhere. At home or out and about. It's the entertainment experience you've been waiting for. Streaming apps included at no extra cost.
Just got that pelt. Get a good look.
With live TV and on demand. All together, all in one place for you to enjoy.
It's whatever kind of adventure we want it to be.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters on your smart TV and connected devices, streaming live 24/7, plus on-demand weather forecast to help you stay prepared. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News, free with your Spectrum subscription, exclusively for Spectrum customers, now available on your favorite devices. At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters on your smart TV and connected devices, streaming live